All right, for our second part on Cezanne, we're going to talk about, I guess the word is techniques, what he employed with his brush in the paints to earn the title of the father of modern art. So, this is something that for many, many years I've read nothing but Cezanne, is the father of modern art. It's because of Cezanne that Matisse painted this way. It's because of Cezanne that Rothko did this. But nobody ever explains why. And a recent book I read, I felt some relief here when I read the author say, admirers of Cezanne's art have always been extravagant in their admiration, but they have always had difficulty explaining themselves. And then for Maurice Denis, who was a contemporary of Picasso's, the turn of the century, he said, I have never heard an admirer of Cezanne give me a clear, precise reason for his admiration. So, with that caveat, we're going to attempt to give you a reason why we should admire Cezanne. And some of this, it's like, show it, don't tell it. I'll try to show some examples here with the slides that with a basis of comparison, you can kind of get a sense, why Cezanne is so important. And my telling it is not going to be near as effective as that. So just maybe try to get in that space where these pictures speak to you a little bit better. And one of the quotes you'll see a lot of Cezanne, that it came from a letter he wrote to a fellow artist, Emile Bernard, who would have been like a generation younger. He was a contemporary of Van Gogh's. They hung out together. But he told Bernard to treat nature by means of the cylinder, the sphere, and the cone. And then people have taken that to be sort of an absolute, that's the way you have to do everything. But it's just another tool. And, I find it uncanny. If you're looking at a portrait or looking at somebody's face or body, and you're going to paint that, or you're looking outside at a landscape or a still life, if you break things down into a sphere, a cone, and a cylinder, and then I want to say throw a cube in there too, it's pretty uncanny how, those are the main forms of nature. And it's just a good reference point to the place to get started, say. But remember what Pissarro said, we're not painting a figure, we're creating harmonies. And the harmonies that Cezanne created, they were just like, just a little bit different kind of music. So one area, we talked about this with Monet and the other impressionists, the brush strokes. It's very important to the way the impressionists put down their painting, and specifically on Cezanne, he did it in these very parallel methodical strokes. Van Gogh did the same thing, Monet did the same thing, but there's just a little bit different way this is applied with Cezanne. It just seems like it's just like this gradual construction going on that you can see, you can sense the beginning and the end of it in a way. And these blotches here, these broken colors, and that instead of the parallel brush strokes, well, they're here. It's just not so rigid and is tightly formed. But compare this to this 1500s painting from a Dutch painter, wonderful painting, but it's just a different kind of energy that's going on. And again, it's something that's speaking to society. It didn't speak to the jurors right off, or probably most of the French public, but it's something that later on became very acceptable as, just a classic piece of art. Same thing here, just the difference. And, last week with Monet, I showed, I would put a Monet up here on the left versus a Bierstadt or a Poussin painting, and you would see the difference there. But we'll compare Cezanne and Monet in a minute. But, versus the bathers, and, these brush strokes are irregular, they're sloppy, they're broken, they're chaotic, etc. Where here, all the objects here, all the forms, they have this polished kind of look to them, which is, that's kind of the really the way it is in some ways. But emotionally, if you're outside, it's there is a vibrational quality to the energy that's going on around us. And Cezanne had a sensation for that. and it was able to articulate it in such a way that it got through to the rest of us. And look at the Monet, excuse me, what's her name? The Mona Lisa compared to the way, the polished nature versus the rough and ragged, but still, both of these are very sensual paintings. You melt into this Mona Lisa in a sense, and you melt into this Cezanne. And, but Cezanne uses this kind of rugged, crude brushstroke approach, whereas with the Mona Lisa and Da Vinci, it's this smooth and polished and easygoing and soft. But we still get a soft and sensual painting here with Cezanne. And Monet, it's like, okay, as opposed to Cezanne, this is a cropped area over here. You can see all this brushwork going on here, very much energetic like Cezanne. But with Monet, there's a little bit of difference in that, there would have been pronounced brush strokes in this area and this area, whereas Monet would kind of put a blurry undertone, and then he would put dots and dashes, kind of like dancing notes in a piece of sheet music on top to get his vibration quality across to us. That it's like this whole areas are these strokes, and this, that's kind of washy, and then a distinct mark there. And I sent this to some of you in the that are going to do the demonstration with me, but this is a painting here on the left. It's quite large, and I put it in black and white instead of color. It helps a little bit, but it's just marks. And the artist is Gunther Forge, who recently passed away, a German expressionist artist. But it's just these marks, and it's a wonderful image, especially if I put it in color. But note these, 100 years later, how these clouds are depicted here with Cezanne with this same kind of energy. And point being, for me, within abstract art, there are these elements that people say, well, that's bunk, and I could do that. But just believe that Cezanne felt this energy, these clouds, and this is the way he articulated them. And we get that sensation as too. So it's an honest rendition, although it doesn't match up to the accurate depiction. And then Forg is picking up on this same kind of energy, and he's placing them in this interesting arrangement. And we're getting this similar situation of something, of nature's energy coming through to us loud and clear. And this is, I cropped the area of this Saint Victoire painting and put it in black and white. Helps a little bit to see the differences. But just look at all these irregular marks. And, they end up, it's a pile of chaos. It's turned into this beautiful, sensuous, unified whole. And I'll mention clarity here. When I say clarity, we're used to, I think, something crisp and sharp and, this and distinct. Well, look at this painting here. There's really not a lot of clarity. There's all this chaos going on, but there's this unified whole, which is very clear. And so instead of, a clarity for the superficial eye, in a sense, or for the quick thinking brain, it's a clarity that speaks to the subconscious. And I'm requoting here, standing before a painting by Cezanne, and you are aware of something strange, something altogether different from the paintings you have been accustomed to seeing. You are for a moment puzzled. Why? Because Cezanne has painted not a fixed, immovable nature, but a plastic, mobile nature. It is alive with movement, and solidized, his forms melt into each other. So, back to this painting here, in terms of not something you've ever seen before, but this chaos going on. That's probably a bad word for it. I want to say it's just all this energy that's vibrating out there in the world. And when we go to Van Gogh next week, we'll see that he captured all that vibrating energy. But I think, for me, Cezanne is just mimicking, what's out there. It's just not so obvious to us. And then, you could, like banging on the piano, you could bang on all these notes, but you've got to put it into a unified whole. And, that has to do with his sort of genius level sensibility. And, speaking of things we had never seen before, this Monet on the left, and this was, preceded Monet by 50 years or so by J.M.W. Turner, these fuzzy, gauzy paintings. And again, instead of, this chaotic, energetic marks, there are these, almost irrecognizable, very subdued marks going on. But again, it's a mess that's turned into this wonderful whole. And so, speaking of going quick and fast to an area, this Caravaggio painting of card players here, done in the 1500s, it's just an incredible painting as far as it gives you a sense of space, and there's just so many positive things to say about it. But, I want to say I quickly go to this area here. Well, Cezanne, I'm going to go to the white pipes or the cards or his collar, that bright, versus the dark kind of thing. I'm going to go there. But I don't go there so quickly, and I don't go there so hard and fast, I want to say. And that gives you a sense of, kind of a stay with it a minute and things start expanding, as opposed to contracted, I grabbed it, I got it. And, similar here with the bathers. We just don't go there as quick with Cezanne. We go there slower and we stay longer. And hence, quite an expanded experience. Similar here. And then as far as space, we're kind of, this kind of all blends together, but, we're not just going to this central point, which, in this painting, if you look at it, especially if you compare it to some of his peers, you'll really see how you feel like you're inside this room. You feel like you're inside a three-dimensional box. It's very clear in that sense, and he's created this sense of space that is very powerful. Well, over here, we don't go to a spot, and there's kind of not this sense of space like in this three-dimensional box. It's kind of flat in our face, but at the same time, it's like, it's that fourth dimension, that overwhelming sense of this infinite space. It's like no pinpoint, just all of it. Why settle for just a little when you can have it all? Maybe what I'm saying. So here's an area that's a little bit easier to grasp, at least it was for me. How Cezanne would take this house, this field, these mountains, and if we took a photograph of those, there would be quite a distortion in the sizes. The perspective was off, and it's like he emphasizes areas in ways that are incorrect to the actual depiction of the painting or the picture. And there's an interesting book. I think the first edition came out in the 1940s by Earl Laurent. And Laurent was an art professor and painter that taught at Stanford. And he went to Aix-en-Provence, and lived in Cezanne's house for a while, or in his studio, but familiarized himself with the area and took photographs of where Cezanne had painted paintings and tried to match them up as best he could. There's some good matches and some that are pretty close, but it's an interesting book, no doubt. But just notice here how in this depiction of the photograph, how the road does what the road does here. It's low and going into the past, and that gives you a sense of going around the corner and going back in the distance. And then, sorry, notice the hill here. It's much smaller in the background, and that's kind of the way it's going to be smaller because it's farther away. Well, look at what Cezanne does. He makes that mountain larger, so it has a sense of it's coming at us. And this road, instead of going away, it's also coming at us. And this mountain, it is far away, and you can tell it's like, foreground, midground, background. It's moving away, but he's made it much larger. And again, he's making us feel this sensation of the whole. And, other painters of the day are going, maybe I don't have to paint with such perspective anymore. that is a cool sensation. I want to start seeing the world in that way. And then they go out and they look, and it's like, aha, I see. That's the way it really is. It, you know, if your mind is in such a state, it all comes together in that way. Same thing here with the Mount Saint Victoire, you know, typical photograph here. You know, these trees, the countryside, and then the mountain, the big imposing mountain, and it's far away, but it's also, you know, the main part of the painting. And what Cezanne has done is he kept it the main part of the painting, but he's brought it forward. It's like, well, why is he doing that? And it's like, instead of doing this going far away and you're narrow, you're thinking, you're going to that point, he's bringing it all together as a unified whole. And you're, you know, voila, we're in the fourth dimension, and that feels pretty cool. Same thing here with the farmhouse painting, you know, going far away off into the mountain and through that pass of the valley. You know, he brings that all forward, and, you know, he brings his countryside forward. And, you know, these are not the proportions that you would normally see if you went out there with your eye and you measured with your thumb and tried to do an accurate rendition. And I thought this was a little bit interesting. The photograph here is from the noted photographer named William Eggleston. And what the statement, nature is more depth than surface. So, you know, my thing with Cezanne is what I think he was doing is the importance of that mountain is a big one. I mean, that's where your eye first goes to. And he's giving way to things that have more emotional importance than they do in a photograph. If he'd done it in the photograph, it wouldn't have been as big as he made it into the painting. And sort of sinks in here with, you know, small child's bicycle, you know, taking up the whole painting, the whole energy of the photograph here versus, you know, the humongous house, the humongous car. It's distorting, you know, reweighting of something, and to give it a better connection to us, a more interesting connection. And this gets a little bit difficult, but this alteration of the points of view. And again, we're back to this disregarding the single point of view. You know, and why did Cezanne do that? And modern artists afterwards start doing that more and more. It's because, again, it's kind of like, you know, do you want to open the heart or narrow the thought, in a sense? And now I'll get a little bit more into this. But so the first time this was pointed out to me, which I learned from that Earl Laurent's book, it started making sense to me. Well, I started grasping why Cezanne is, well, I started seeing some of the differences he does. I still wasn't grasping why it's important, and not sure if I still do. But in a sense, look at the table edges here. Look at this front edge. There's no way it lines up with this, the left side and the right side. Same thing with the back. The angle of the basket of apples here, the way they're angled up like 45 degrees. They're facing one way, and this bottle's at a slant, and the table's not at a slant. He's got all kinds of things going in all different directions. So why is that? Well, what I want to say is that our experience of seeing, if we came upon this table, and, you know, if it's a Caravaggio painting, there'd be some kind of highlight on the bottle or something, our eye would go there fast. And then, you know, more than likely, when we look at the still life, our eye does go to someplace first and kind of want to stop. But if we want to stay with it and kind of be in a more expansive frame of mind, we look down at these basket of apples. We look at this bottle, maybe tilt our head. You know, we look at I think there's some kind of bread in the back, you know. We look at things from different angles. So the experience of seeing is we just don't go to one spot and stop. We kind of check out the whole thing. And as they said about Cezanne, his errors are easy to spot, the effects difficult to fathom. You know, again, so, you know, my explanation of why he's doing that it matches the experience of seeing, you know, I don't know if that's true, but it makes sense to me. Same thing here with this still life. I mean, look at the tilt of the bowl of cherries versus the plate, or the plate of cherries versus the plate of peaches here, or I don't know, peaches, apples, whatever. And then the jar, and you know, one thing about the jar is you look at the top, and it's like, well, this view, the the vertical part of it is almost like you're looking straight on, but then you raise your head up and you're looking up on top. And somebody said, well, Cezanne painted these things. He had no idea he was doing this. And some say, well, he would go over here and paint this for a little while, and then he'd go over there and paint that. And you know what I think is, he loved this plate of cherries and he wanted to paint it the best he could. And he loved this plate of peaches and he painted them the best way he could. He would set up and look at them. He would give them each their due. But then the job was to put it in a harmonic whole. And, you know, it's okay to put them in different points of view. In fact, it's even more effective that way. So that's how I make sense of it. And just kind of a typical rendering here, a quick drawing here, you know, what we look at on the table, and then, you know, look at how things are distorted in the way. It's almost like that this plate is completely vertical here, and, you know, it would be falling off the table if that was the case. And again, we're getting away from this fixed point of view. And, you know, he's weighting things in a different way. He's weighting perspective over here. You know, he's weighting the sea here. We'll talk about that in a minute, how he's kind of distorted that. So, yeah. So, you know, when I look at this painting, it's like we've got, you know, the foreground here where it looks like we're up high overlooking down here. And then we've got the mountains here in the back. But, you know, if we were up high, it's almost like that plate of cherries, that the sea is almost tilted toward us. And what I'm thinking is, we go to the seacoast and we stand there and we look here at the foreground, we look at the background, we take all this in. It's just a wonderful experience to see. But one thing that's going to be very powerful is this ocean, this sea, the Mediterranean Sea here. You know, it's almost like a block or rectangle. It's just like a big mass that's coming at you. And, you know, I say that the emotional component of that that's within this picture, the sea is kind of like a top priority. So he gives it a top priority, but at the same time, he keeps it in balance with the other elements of the painting. And that's where it takes quite some skill. And note too here, this is a painting in black and white, put it in black and white. And what I see here on the right is not as much as this sea kind of being almost vertical and coming in your face. There's a little bit more near and far. And his sensibilities with the colors, he knew how to put a color in that would give an extra emphasis to an area, but at the same time, keep it in harmony. Yep. So same thing here with this points of view. You know, we kind of have one point of view here. We have several going on here with the card players. Mona Lisa, one point of view, pretty much going to her face in this triangle of the hands and the face. And here that, you know, we've got this triangle of the hands and the face, and our point of view goes up here to our eye, but we also go over here to this coffee cup and spoon, and then this the mocha coffee maker over here, and how she's melting into the back of the door there. And whereas, you know, it's Mona Lisa's kind of coming forward from this going back away. You know, it's just a softer harmonic whole going on here, a greater harmonic whole going on here with this Cezanne, I want to say, over the Mona Lisa. Not saying one's better than the other. And that, you know, here's a Vermeer painting that you said I forget, the woman in the pouring a picture in the light or something, you know, just incredible paintings. Hold on, I need to, sorry. You know, but look how distinct and you know, the sense of space, the clarity, and how much, well, there's really none of that here with Cezanne, but then there's all of that. Same thing with Mount Saint Victoire. And this is a little bit off topic here, but this is a Titian painting here in portrait. And look how soft and sensuous a lot of the qualities Cezanne was putting into his paintings, where everything just kind of melts into there. And we do go to, you know, his eye and the collar here, you know, pretty quickly, just like we go to her eye over here, you know, and to the hands in the coffee mug or the coffee cup. But at the same time, you know, he's got a kind of a soft look on his face. And she's kind of got a very rigid look on her face, the way her shoulders and arms, it's very rigid. But at the same time, the painting is very soft. And how did he do that? You know, I don't know. It's these crazy harmonies that he was able to employ. And points of view, we're going to talk about the famous Velázquez painting, Las Meninas, Ladies in Waiting, painted in the 1500s. So there's a lot of things. Some people say it's the greatest painting ever. I'm not sure if there's ever such a thing, but it is a monumental painting in the history of, in art history. But one thing that's very distinct about this painting, in a sense, that sets it apart, well, people talk about a lot about Velázquez, is not, he's looking at us. And basically, this is the King and Queen Philip here in the back, and he's looking at them painting this portrait. So that's, that's kind of a unique kind of situation going on here. But even more so, and this image does not do it justice. I was lucky enough to see this painting a few months ago in person. It's in Madrid in the El Prado. And but notice that everyone in this painting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, including the dog, 12, everyone has a different look. Their gaze is going someplace different. It's not like we're all focused on the little prince here. I mean, she is, but she's not. I mean, everybody's, and she's kind of focusing on the princess here, and she's focusing there. It's just all over the place. But, and so I knew this ahead of time, and this influenced Picasso and the way his Cubist work did, and these multiple points of view. That there's a lot of talk in academic circles about how this painting was groundbreaking in that sense. But what happened when I saw the painting was the way that Velázquez was able to paint people's eyes and their expression. You know, when you look at this, Velázquez, the artist here, he's gazing at his easel, but he's gazing at you, and you see his, and it's almost like you're a deer in the headlights when you see his eyes. And even the king and queen back here, way back here in the mirror, their eyes glare at you. And the princess, it's like this little right eye here. It's kind of a sconce, and it's like it's looking at us. And then you see her look, her look, her look. They're all going in different directions, but they are all so distinct. It's crazy. And it's like Velázquez captured the energy of that room, of the individuality of that room. Everybody's going in a different direction in a sense, and he captured it. And, you know, that's kind of this reality of looking at the still life. You know, you look here, you look there. Each one of those items has a different energy, is in a different place. And the goal of the artist is to capture that and then to put it in this harmonic whole. And here's some examples. Renaissance painting. This is a Della Francesca here on the right. I forget the artist here on the left. But anyway, everybody's here in this room, and they're kind of all doing different things and looking in different ways. And I've not seen these in person, and maybe it's as powerful as Velázquez, but something tells me they're not. That Velázquez captured this very unique, these individual energies and put them into a harmonic whole. And Picasso, in the 1950s, when he was 60, 70 years old, he spent a year painting nothing but all kinds of versions of Las Meninas. And in our fourth week, we'll be talking about that more in depth. And then also one of Picasso's signature paintings, some people say it's the first Cubist painting, this Mademoiselles of Avignon here on the left. You know, they're all looking in different directions in sense. I mean, it's like, and this one's really looking in a different direction in another sense. So Picasso says he owes it all to Cezanne. And yeah, same thing here. His great mural, Guernica, Picasso's mural from 1937, depicting the horrific bombing of the town of Guernica in Spain that Hitler and Franco were involved in. And, you know, the horror on all these different people and animals, you know, and they're individual. It's kind of that Las Meninas, and it's kind of that multiple points of view on on the still life of Cezanne. And Picasso's Cubism, you know, Monet's is like no focal point, no place to put your eye, no energies all over. And, you know, that's part of the deal there too. Matisse employed a lot of this, and I'll explain more when we get to the Matisse section in week 5, Pollock. So let's talk about, you know, Pollock and this all over feel. They call this equalization painting. And it, you know, it's kind of like it's a Las Meninas with the entire world going on here. Everybody's got a different point of view. It's got different stuff going on. Everybody's an individual, but there's a unified whole that the artist put together. So Cubism. So look at a cube, and you know, we see 3 sides. But you know, there's 3 more sides, and depending on which angle you hold the cube at is you know, what you're going to see. Again, it's like multiple points of view tell you the whole. And think of a human being. You see him from the back, from the front, from the side. And you know, when you see a human being from the front, you have just one part of who that person is physically, emotionally, mentally, etc., their character. You know, we only see a little bit of that, but the artist wants to give us more than that one quick view. I read this a week or 2 ago. It's like, just think if all the artist did was paint one side, this, let's say the silhouette side, and after a while they would be convinced that the human being only had one eye. So again, we're just trying to get a wider sense of perception going on here. Now I'm going to skip this one here. And let's go with this too. The nearby is far away. I like that. And the far away is nearby. I read that once, and I'm sure they say that all over the place, but in Taos, New Mexico, where the big mountain, beautiful mountain is there, you know, you look at the mountain and you say, oh, it's far away, but then it feels nearby. And then you look at the mountain and you say, oh, it feels nearby, but it's far away. You know, should I stay or should I go? Is it coming or is it going? And this dynamic movement of change that's all around us all the time. Think of a molecule with the electrons, the protons, and the neutrons. You know, everything's always moving and changing, and that the energies are shifting. They're going back and forth. And, you know, it's just kind of the dynamicism that we exist within. And I want to say Cezanne characterizes that quite well and captures that energy. You know, again, how we distorted the mountain away from the photograph. And there's a little bit of that. He brings it closer, but it's still far away. And he's capturing both those energies, those conflicting energies. And yeah, think of the peak of a mountain. You know, when you look at a mountain, I mean, I do, you know, I think your first thing is you're going to go to the summit. You know, that's just kind of a natural place to go. And you know, with this is a cropped area of one of those Victoria paintings. And yeah, we do go to the summit there, don't we? You know, or I do. But at the same time, you like take a step back, blink your eyes and open up. And it's like, all of a sudden, it might not be as prominent as you think. And then, you know, when you put it into the whole of the painting, it's like there's so much more there going on that it loses its domination, and that domination that would detract from the feeling of this kind of being in this big hole, and whole with the W. Here's a Monet painting on the right compared to Cezanne. I said I was going to compare that. I don't think I have many more. But, you know, Monet was getting it too. And you can tell he kind of brings this all forward. If we had an actual photograph of this, I would bet that this cliff here is going to be much smaller and much further away. And Monet is, you know, like his water lilies. He gave us a great sense of presence with those. Cezanne is doing the same thing. And back to the housekeeper, you know, and this is a Goya painting on the left, and our eye goes to this spot here. And, you know, there's a lot of places where you know, more than one spot where our eye goes with her. And, you know, it gives it a sense of flatness, but it also gives it a sense of, you know, being in this space with her. And this, So Bryce Martin, a noted abstract artist of the late 20th century, he said, using color as if placed on a scale, the weight of things was one of Cezanne's magical properties. So that's where I pointed out, this difference between the black and white image and the color image. And you can see that, somehow or another, this blue is the one that, it gives it more emphasis to our subconscious. And, if he would have used a darker blue, a lighter blue, a green, a red, a purple, it probably wouldn't have worked as well. And it just speaks to his color sensibility and gives it that sense of, this mass. And this briefly here, this pointing out the different energies, that are going on. And this is not just unique to Cezanne, but, we've got this kind of, this going from up here to down here, that's kind of a triangle here in the foreground, and it's going to take our eye to here. And there's a lot of different scattered things going on, which would be typical of what's closest to your face. And it's like, okay, I'm right here. I'm looking down on this village here. And then that's the sea. It's almost, like I've seen, it's kind of vertical, and it's not coming straight down, but it's kind of, going left or right, kind of at an angle. But there's a part of it that seems like it is almost vertical. And then the horizon, it's going across in the back. It's, the eye is going from left to right. And there's a sense of going from near to far. So there's all kinds of energies going on here, which, a good painting from the Renaissance would have in it. It's just, I guess what I'm pointing out here is a lot of energies going on. Cezanne knew how to capture those. But what the uniqueness is that sea and how it has a little bit of extra weight to it. So let's say, who else knew this? I pointed to more modern artists that grabbed a hold of Cezanne, but here are some more examples. Of course, Monet, who was born about the same time, within a year of Cezanne, he was getting this concept, as was a mentor of Monet's, J.M.W. Turner in England. They're taking out this they're making the images much more expansive and speak to a different level of our consciousness. Van Gogh, who we'll talk about next week, not so much, the techniques that he used in painting. He has these very energetic, vivid brushstrokes, which very close resemble Cezanne. Van Gogh thought the world of Cezanne. He knew he was unbelievably great, but that sense of the inner life that Cezanne had, whether it was an apple, a teacup, or a human being, or a mountain, I want to say that Van Gogh had that same kind of ability, and we'll talk more about him next week. Here's some cropped areas. This one on the left is Van Gogh's bedroom. Look at these brush strokes. That's very Cezanne-esque there going on, and it's like capturing the energy of the universe there. And the flatness of Matisse, which he's known for, it reminds me of the flatness of this card player painting versus how we, showed it versus the Caravaggio card players. And just because something's flat doesn't mean that it doesn't have depth, in the sense, because, this looks flat, and so do the card players. But when you reduce this to a black and white image, you can see these light and darks, the way they contrast, and you get a sense of depth, of near to far, which, gives it the space and the volume, which it's not as flat as what you think, is what I'm saying. It's like her dark coming this way, and then that, even though that's light and it should be kind of in front of her dark outnumbers that. And then, the window goes back. So we have a sense of depth and space there going on, even though it's a very flat painting. Similar here with this landscape. Picasso's Guernica mural, just, flat as a pancake everywhere. But there's still, since it's in these dark and light tones, you do get a sense of these overlapping layers and a depth and space, and it allows the viewer to make some relation to its reality. Similarly with the Picasso's Mademoiselle Sauvignon, very flat and angular, etc., but there is there is depth going on here. Oh, and excuse me, I put the Picasso in here because, again, we talked about father of us all and Cubism, all these inventions or in words of Picasso, and they all go back to Cezanne. And then Joan Miró, a Barcelona artist, became popular with just prior to the abstract expressionists of the United States, but a lot of minimalist work in his, a lot of kind of a few marks here and there, but in a sense, the sensation is, if it's done right, you're immersed into this bigger whole. And Paul Klee, another artist from the 1900s, pre-1950 abstract expressionism, a Swiss-German artist that painted these kind of, like a Jackson Pollock or a Monet water lily. There's really no focal point here, but at the same time, it evokes a sense of being in this bigger space. Mark Rothko, same thing. Pollock, same thing. And then a little more modern, up the scale of time, Richard Diebenkorn, his Ocean Park series. There's just these flat, colorful paintings in a sense, and without any depth at all in a sense. But again, you're immersing yourself into this fourth dimension, let's say. Cy Twombly, same thing. Wonderful artist, but everybody says that my kids can scribble like that, but his marks are like Cezanne's in a way. They're effective. And Agnes Martin, I got to throw her in there. She's one of my favorites. She's very difficult to get. It took me years, and I finally did. And I say, if you don't stay with it, one day you might be lucky enough to feel the vibration of her paintings. But she painted over and over these just simple grids, a lot of these blue and whites paintings, but it's the same kind of sensation of being in that space. And she lived, her last years were in Taos. Most of her adult life was in New Mexico. And then just throwing in here, because I love this artist, her name was Sister Gertrude Morgan. She was a New Orleans street preacher, but she would do paintings with tempera and, I don't know, maybe acrylics on cardboard. And just this flatness of this space and this kind of this chaotic scene of this, that, and the other, but she manages to put it into this wonderful organic soft whole. And like Cezanne's seascape here, it's like everything's coming forward, but no, is it receding and going back? It's just this unified chaos made into this magnificent whole. It's like, the image is static too. Let's point that out. It's a fixed image, period. But that, the energies of the universe, they're everywhere. They're ongoing. And it's like, okay, paint that moment. And Matisse will do in week 5. This is his famous painting, Red Room or Red Studio. And, you can tell there's dimensions here in the room, and that's the corner. It's kind of a funky angle going on, or more than one angle, like Cezanne. But again, it's this unified whole. And, what you can see in Sister Morgan's painting. And I'm sure Sister Morgan knew the name Cezanne. But, as far as her art studies, this was all from the gut. And, that's another wonderful aspect to what a good painting has. It comes from a very sincere spot. And Matisse's The Happy Life here on the right, same kind of thing. And Sister Morgan, when I see her paintings, I always think of a Pollock. But again, she's taken us into that bigger space, and Cezanne knew how to do that like nobody's business. The gentle is power, and he could put soul in a teacup, treeness in a tree, humanity in a human. And why is it that we feel this momentary completeness of being when we look at his work? Well, he just knew how to make that connection, I guess. And we're lucky he did. All right. Thank you very much. And I'll see you next week when we'll talk about Vincent van Gogh. Take care.